The door didn't just close, it struck the frame with a violence that felt personal, as if the house itself rejected me. For a second, I just stood there on my daughter's porch, blinking at the wood grain inches from my face. The echo of Lily's words still vibrated in my chest, sharp, unforgiving, thrown at me with the kind of force only a wounded adult child can muster. "You ruin everything." There are insults a man shrugs off in his youth. Age teaches you patience, tolerance, humility. Age also teaches you how to absorb blows without staggering. But hearing those words from my own daughter, my Lily, stung deeper than I cared to admit. The porch light flickered above me, as if unsure whether to stay on or join her in shutting me out. I could hear movement inside, footsteps retreating, a muffled sob, then the soft click of the lock turning. That final, cold punctuation. I looked down at what I was still holding. A small, neatly wrapped gift. A bracelet for my granddaughter Emily, something simple, something with her initials. The sort of present a grandfather gives without ceremony. Yet that little package felt heavy now, as though it absorbed the entire weight of our fractured relationship. A couple across the street slowed their evening walk to glance over, not with judgment, but with the quiet curiosity people wear when they sense domestic tension unfolding nearby. I gave them a polite nod, and they moved along. "All right," I murmured to myself. "All right." I took the steps slowly, each groan of the wood beneath my shoes reminding me I was too old for unexpected heartbreaks. Too old, perhaps, for the constant tiptoeing around my daughter's temper. But she wasn't always like this. That thought lingered like fog around my boots as I reached my car. I placed the gift on the passenger seat, then sat behind the wheel for a long moment before turning the key. The engine coughed awake. Night had already fallen, casting the quiet neighborhood in long strips of shadow and amber streetlight. I drove in that glow, letting the road unfold ahead of me, while my mind drifted backwards. Years, decades, all the way to the small girl who used to run to me when thunder frightened her. Somewhere along the way, something broke. Cracked so gradually neither of us noticed until we were standing on opposite sides of the fault line. When I reached a red light, I opened the glove compartment. Inside was an old wooden box, the kind my late wife Anna used to make when she took up woodworking. She made this one for me specifically, for important things, she'd said. My hand hovered over it. I hadn't opened it in a long time, not since the day she slipped the letter inside and pressed the lid closed with trembling fingers. The letter meant for Lily. The letter Lily didn't know existed. The letter I'd prayed I would never have to give her. My fingers finally touched the wood. Warm, familiar. A remnant of a different era of our lives, when love wasn't something that had to be proven or fought for. It simply existed, like the sun rising. I didn't open it, not yet. But the light turned green as if giving me permission to drive forward into a moment I had been avoiding for almost 20 years. As I pulled into my long gravel driveway, the quiet hum of night seemed to press around my car. Crickets, a distant dog barking, the whisper of wind through pine branches. All of it reminding me of the silence I'd lived in since losing Anna. I sat there in the dark for a long moment, hands still on the wheel. I whispered to no one but the restless trees, I hoped I'd never have to give her this. But today, Lily's words had slammed more than just the door. They slammed open a part of the past I'd been trying to keep sealed. And sometimes, no matter how carefully you bury the truth, life has a way of digging it back up, one painful shovel at a time. I stepped out of the car, cradling the wooden box in both hands. Tomorrow, I decided, would be different. Tomorrow, I would begin the hardest conversation of my life. Sleep didn't visit me that night. It hovered at the edge of the room, watching, waiting, but never touching me. Instead, I lay awake with the ghost of Lily's voice circling my mind. "You ruin everything." It wasn't just the words. It was the way her face crumpled right before she said them. The way her voice cracked. Pain disguising itself as anger, something I knew too well. I finally rose from bed just before dawn, the sky still bruised with the last traces of night. My joints protested, but age teaches you how to negotiate with aches. A hand here, a stretch there, and eventually the old bones cooperate. The house always feels different in these early hours, quieter, as if grief itself is still asleep. I set a kettle on the stove and moved to the kitchen table where I'd placed the wooden box the night before. It sat there, small yet impossibly heavy. I ran my thumb along the carved edges. Anna's handiwork. She had never been perfect with the knife, but the imperfections in her craft were always charming, always endearing. She'd made dozens of these boxes in her final years. A way, she said, of keeping her hands busy so she didn't focus too much on the ticking clock she couldn't stop. But this box, this particular one, was different. This one she made slowly, carefully, painfully. Inside it lay the letter she had handwritten for our daughter on a day when the doctors had spoken to her privately, a day she didn't want me to hear the truth before she told me herself. She was good at pretending, good at smiles. But that afternoon when she came home, her eyes looked far beyond the horizon. She knew. She knew she was leaving us. I didn't open the box now. The kettle whistled and I poured myself tea instead, letting the steam fog my glasses. The smell of chamomile filled the kitchen, Anna's favorite, a tiny ritual of hers I had kept alive all these years. Even when Lily stopped coming by regularly, even when life grew quiet. I carried the mug to the living room and lowered myself into the old armchair by the window. The same chair I had sat in with Lily on my knee when she was little. She would curl into me like a small kitten while I read to her. Her hair smelled of sunshine and dirt. Where had that softness gone? No, not gone. Hidden. Buried beneath layers of fear, resentment, and misunderstandings we never unraveled. I felt it rising inside me, the need to go back, to pry open the dusty corners of memory and examine where we first split apart. It was 12 years ago, or 13. The night her mother died. That night replayed in my head like a film with jagged cuts and missing audio, only certain moments crystal clear. Lily was 17 then, angry at the world, angry at herself, angry at me because I wasn't the miracle she prayed for. She had come home from school early that day, found me in the kitchen with the doctor's pamphlets spread across the counter. She grabbed one, read a few lines, and threw it down. "Why didn't you tell me it was this bad?" she'd screamed. I had told her, many times, but denial is a powerful shield, and teenagers choose which truths to hear. That night, when Anna's breathing grew shallow, I had called Lily, told her to come, begged her to come. But she was at a friend's house and refused to believe it was truly the end. "I'll come later," she said. Later never came. Anna slipped away while I held her hand, her grip weakening like a candle flame burning through the last wick. When Lily arrived, she ran into the room, drove to her knees beside the bed, and cried in a way I'd never heard before. Raw, broken, accusatory. "You should have saved her," she said, as if I wouldn't have given my own heartbeat to do so. The next weeks were a blur of silence. Lily shut herself behind bedroom doors, stayed out late, refused to look at me. But the real fracture appeared the day she found the letter her mother had written to her when she first got sick. A different letter, a shorter one Anna wrote months before the diagnosis worsened. It said, "Your father is keeping things from you to protect you." She meant the medical details, the treatments, the symptoms, but Lily read it as, "Your father lied to you." She confronted me with that letter in her hand, shaking like an injured deer. And I, grieving, exhausted, had no words gentle enough to reach her. That was the first time she yelled at me. The echo of that argument followed us into the years, settling like sediment at the bottom of every exchange we had. And now, here we were, full circle, a slammed door and a gift sitting untouched on her kitchen counter. I sipped the cooled tea and closed my eyes, inhaling the morning air drifting through the cracked window. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crowed. It was going to be a long day. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. A message from my granddaughter. "Grandpa, are you okay? Mom seemed really upset yesterday." I stared at the words a long moment. Emily, sweet, tender-hearted Emily, trying so hard to understand her mother's storms. I typed back slowly. "I'm all right, sweetheart. I'm worried about your mom, though." 3 dots pulsed on the screen as she typed. "She cries a lot. She said she doesn't want to talk about Grandma anymore. I don't know what to do." My chest tightened. Lily hadn't cried in front of me in years. She only yelled. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I looked toward the wooden box on the table, the morning sun now hitting its surface like a spotlight. Maybe this wasn't just about restoring our relationship. Maybe it was about giving Lily a truth she had been too afraid to face. The question was she ready for it? Was I? My phone buzzed again. "Grandpa, can you come over sometime this week? I think Mom needs you." Even if she says she doesn't, I swallowed hard. When children become the emotional bridge between broken adults, it means the damage has already spread further than anyone admits. I typed a single word: soon. The kettle whistled again behind me. I hadn't even realized I'd turned it on. The house felt colder suddenly, despite the morning light creeping in. Today, I decided, I would revisit the past with both hands open. But tomorrow would be the day I faced Lily again. This time, not just as her father, but as the keeper of a truth she desperately needed to read. The next morning arrived with the scent of rain, heavy clouds dragging themselves across the sky as if exhausted from carrying too much. I stepped onto my porch with my coffee in hand, watching the distant drizzle gather strength. Storms always make me reflective. They remind me that even nature has its breaking points, moments when the sky simply cannot hold back anymore. Lily was like that lately, a sky ready to burst. As the rain thickened, I sat in my porch chair and let memory drag me backward, to all the warning signs I ignored. Not because I was blind. No, I saw them. I just convinced myself they were temporary. But she would eventually untangle whatever knots were tightening inside her chest. But I was wrong. The signs had been there long before she shouted at me on her doorstep. Take her birthday last year. I remembered buying her a delicate silver necklace, a design her mother used to wear. I wrapped it carefully, placed it in a soft velvet pouch, and drove to her house. Lily opened the door only halfway, like she wasn't sure she wanted to let me in. She smiled politely, but it was the sort of smile you give a stranger, not your father. When she opened the gift, she didn't even touch the necklace, just stared at it with a tight expression. "Dad, why would you get this?" she asked. I'd said gently. Her face darkened as if I'd thrown seawater on a flame instead of feeding it. "Dad, I told you I don't like talking about her." Talking about her or remembering her? But I didn't ask. I'd learned that questions sometimes added fuel to fires already smoldering beneath the surface. She put the necklace back in the box, closed it calmly, and set it on a shelf without another word. She didn't wear it. Not then, not ever. That should have told me something. A few months later, she forgot my birthday entirely. I told myself it didn't matter, that people get busy, that being a parent is draining, that life pulls us in too many directions at once. But when Emily later confessed, Mom remembered she just wasn't in the mood for visitors, I felt a crack form inside me, a thin hairline fracture. Then came Christmas, the one where she didn't invite me to the family dinner because we're keeping it small this year. I respected it, but when Emily showed me photos, dozens of people crowding the living room, laughter and wrapping paper everywhere, I recognized the lie. She hadn't wanted me there. Not because she hated me. I don't believe that. No child truly hates the parent who held them as a newborn. But resentment. Resentment is a vine. It grows in the dark, crawling up the beams of a relationship until it strangles the sunlight out of every moment. Lily never learned how to trim that vine, and I never learned how to confront it without hurting her. The rain tapered slightly, a gentle lull between cloudbursts. I took a deep breath, letting the damp air fill my chest. The world always smells different before a storm, earthy, honest, like nothing wants to hide. I wish people were more like that. My phone vibrated in my shirt pocket, another message from Emily. Grandpa, Mom hasn't left her room today. She told me she made things worse again. I'm scared. I felt that message like a physical blow. Lily wasn't cruel by nature. She wasn't hateful. She was drowning, flailing in waters I thought she'd learned to swim long ago. I typed back as carefully as I could. I'm going to check on her tomorrow, I promise. Her reply came quickly. Please, she won't listen to me. I rubbed my forehead, feeling the familiar ache building behind my eyes. Children aren't supposed to carry their parents' emotional burdens. It unsettled me that Emily was beginning to understand her mother's storms more intimately than a child should. As I put the phone away, my gaze shifted back to the wooden box on the table beside me. It drew my attention like a magnet. The grain in the wood seemed deeper today, richer, as though the weather outside was coaxing the past to rise. My wife's handwriting was still etched into my memory. Rounded letters, slightly slanted, gentle. She always wrote as if she were comforting the paper. The letter inside the box was written during a moment of clarity, a window between waves of pain and medication. She wanted to leave Lily something pure, something honest. But honesty, I learned, can be the heaviest gift of all. After finishing my coffee, I grabbed my coat and stepped inside. My house was dim, lit only by the gray spill of light through the windows. Dust floated in the air like ash. Maybe that's why the place felt like a museum of everything I'd lost. Photos of Lily as a child, pictures of Anna smiling on fishing trips, trinkets from vacations we'd taken before her illness chipped away pieces of her strength. I stopped at a picture frame on the hall table. Lily at age 5, sitting on my shoulders. She was laughing, reaching for the sky with a stick she called her magic wand. She really believed she could touch the clouds if she tried hard enough. Somewhere along the line, the clouds stopped feeling reachable for her, and I still carried the guilt of letting her fall through them. As I walked to the kitchen desk, I sorted through a stack of mail, bills, advertisements, political letters, mundane things. But beneath them was something that made my heart pause. A letter addressed to Lily, from her mother's old friend, Margaret. I hadn't seen Margaret in years. She knew things, remembered things, maybe even carried pieces of the story Lily never heard. My hands trembled lightly. It was time, I realized, to stop letting the past rot in sealed boxes and half-spoken memories. Lily wasn't angry because she hated me. She was angry because she never understood me, and because I never explained myself. The storm finally broke outside, thunder rolling through the neighborhood like ancient drums. And I understood then that storms don't come because the sky is angry. They come because the sky can't hold itself together anymore. Lily was reaching her breaking point. If I didn't step toward her now, honestly, fully, she might shatter in a way neither of us could repair. Tomorrow would be the day I returned to her door. Not as a wounded father, not as a man seeking forgiveness, but as someone finally ready to tell her the truth she spent half her life running from. I arrived at Lily's house the next afternoon, the sky still swollen with remnants of yesterday's storm. The neighborhood was quiet, almost unnervingly so, as if the world itself were holding its breath, waiting to see how this visit would unfold. I parked at the curb instead of the driveway, a small act of respect or caution, maybe both. For a moment, I just sat there, hands resting on the steering wheel, feeling the tremor that always comes before a difficult truth. The wooden box lay on the passenger seat beside me, closed, patient, waiting. Its presence felt like a heartbeat in the small space of the car. But I didn't bring it with me yet. Truth has a time and a place. This wasn't the moment for the letter, not unless Lily opened a door inside herself first. I stepped out into the damp air. The grass squished beneath my shoes, still soaked from the storm. As I walked toward her front steps, I noticed the way the weeds had surged up through the cracks in the walkway. Plants grow quickly when no one tends them. So do emotional wounds. Her curtains were drawn tight across every window. Even the porch light was off, though it was early afternoon. The house looked shuttered, like someone hiding from the world. I knocked lightly. No answer. I waited, hands in my pockets. The faint hum of a car engine passing somewhere down the block, a dog barking distantly, normal sounds, but somehow they made the silence at this door feel even heavier. I knocked again, firmer this time. Still nothing. But I knew she was home. Emily had texted me earlier. "Mom's here. She said she doesn't want to see anyone, but please try anyway." A father learns the sound of silence when his child is on the other side of it. "Lily," I said softly, leaning closer to the door, "I'm not here to fight." There was a faint rustle inside, barely audible, a shift of weight on a floorboard. I just need to talk, just for a minute." For a long moment, only the wind answered me, rustling through the leaves of the front yard maple tree. Then something clicked, a soft metallic sound, the deadbolt. The door opened only an inch, and the sight of her sent a cold wave through me. Her eyes were red, her hair pulled back messily. She looked tired, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind that comes from carrying too many unspoken things. "What do you want?" she whispered. Not angry this time, just drained. "To see you," I said gently, "to make sure you're all right." She opened the door another inch, her fingers tightening on the edge of it, as if it were the only thing holding her upright. "I told you yesterday, Dad, I can't do this. I can't deal with you right now." "You shouldn't have to deal with me," I said. "I'm not here to be a problem, Lily." She stared at me, eyes searching my face for something. Intent, weakness, guilt, a lie. I let her look. I had nothing to hide anymore. She finally exhaled shakily. "I'm not in a good place right now." "I know," I replied, "and that's why I'm here." Her expression flickered. Fear, maybe? Or shame? "Dad, please," she said, voice cracking. "I don't have the energy for this. For us." The words struck deeper than she knew. For us. As though our relationship itself had become something heavy, something burdensome, something she didn't know how to carry anymore. "Emily's worried," I said softly. Pain flashed through her eyes. She looked away. "Emily worries too much," she muttered. "I'm fine." But she wasn't. Anyone could see that. "Lily," I said, letting a little firmness into my tone, the kind a father uses when love must stand taller than fear. "Open the door, please." For a moment, she didn't move. Then, with a sigh that sounded like something breaking loose inside her, she opened it fully. Her house. God, her house told a story all on its own. Stacks of unopened mail on the entryway table, a laundry basket overflowing onto the floor, dishes piled in the sink, a blanket crumpled on the couch where someone had clearly slept. The lights were off despite the gray daylight outside, leaving the living room looking like a cave. She noticed me looking and crossed her arms defensively. "It's been a rough week," she said sharply. "I'm not judging," I replied. "Yes, you are." "No," I said. "I'm remembering." "Remembering what?" I stepped further inside, voice low. "The last time our house looked like this was when your mom got sick." Her jaw tightened instantly. Her shoulders pulled up like a shield. "Don't," she said, stepping back. "Don't bring her into this." "I have to," I replied, "because she's part of this, Lily. She always has been." Her breath quickened. "Stop it. Dad, stop. You don't know what it's like. You don't know how hard everything is right now." "I know it feels impossible," I said, "but you don't have to pretend you're holding everything together." "I'm not pretending," she shouted suddenly. "I am holding it together. For Emily, for work, for the house." "Then who's holding you?" I asked softly. The question struck her like a slap. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. Only silence, raw and trembling. She pressed a hand to her forehead, pacing a few steps into the living room before stopping abruptly. "You can't fix this," she whispered. "You can't fix anything. Every time you come around, something gets worse." That familiar sting flared in my chest, but I didn't recoil this time. I stood my ground gently. I don't want to fix things, I told her. I just want to understand them, understand you. She shook her head violently. You don't understand because you never listen. You never explain anything. You never told me what really happened with Mom. That's why I'm here, I interrupted quietly. There's something you need to know, something I should have told you years ago. Her eyes snapped toward me, wide and fearful. What? What is it? The truth sat on my tongue, heavy and urgent, but this wasn't the moment. Not yet. Instead, I said, there's a letter from your mother. Lily froze. All color drained from her face. A letter? She whispered. I nodded. A letter she wrote for you, one she asked me to give you when the time was right. Her breaths came fast now, shallow, rapid. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, voice rising in panic. Because you weren't ready, I said, and because I didn't want to hurt you more than you already were. She stared at me, trembling. Then, without warning, she slammed the door again, not in anger this time, but in fear. And the soft, broken sob I heard from the other side told me I'd just opened a door inside her far more dangerous than the wooden one between us. I stepped back, letting her have the space she needed. Tomorrow, I decided, would be the day I brought her the letter, whether she wanted it or not. That night, the house felt colder than usual. My home has always been quiet, but this was a different kind of quiet, an unsettled hush that creeps under doors and seeps into the bones. I sat in my study, with only a single lamp burning, its dull yellow light casting long shadows that stretched across the floor like reaching hands. On the desk in front of me lay the wooden box. For hours, I didn't touch it, just sat there, listening to the ticking clock on the wall. Each tick felt like a small push against my back, urging me toward a decision I'd avoided for years. I finally reached out and lifted the lid. The soft creak of the hinges sounded heartbreakingly familiar. Inside, wrapped in the same delicate linen my wife used for everything she cared about, was the letter. Her handwriting on the envelope, for Lily, was still as graceful as the day she'd written it. I traced my fingers over the letters slowly. A part of me still couldn't believe she was gone, even after all these years. Grief doesn't age the way people do. It stays the same size, only we grow around it. I held the envelope to my chest and closed my eyes. Memories returned uninvited. Anna, sitting at the kitchen table, hair thinning, fingers trembling slightly as she wrote. She had insisted on handwriting everything, even when her hands grew weak. Letters carry a piece of the writer, she always said. Paper remembers what the heart tries to say. That day, she'd waved me away when I approached. Let me write this alone, she whispered, her voice fragile yet determined. I didn't know then that this letter would become the heaviest object I'd ever carry. Now, sitting in my study, I debated whether I had the right, even now, to give it to Lily. Was this opening a healing wound or ripping open a scar that barely closed? The rain returned outside, tapping against the window in uneven rhythms. A storm, but quieter than yesterday's, more persistent, like it had something it needed to wash away. I exhaled slowly and slid the letter from the linen wrap. Before I even broke the seal, I felt a shift, some old emotional door clicking open inside me. I had never read this letter. Anna didn't want me to. It's for her heart, not yours, she'd said. But after yesterday, after Lily's panic, after the years of distance between us, I needed to know what my wife had asked of me. My fingers trembled as I opened the envelope. The first thing I saw was her handwriting, rounded, kind, the letters filled with the softness she never lost, even when life was slipping away from her. My breath caught as I read, "My beloved Lily, if you are reading this, then the years have taken me farther from you than I ever wished to go." I stopped there, unable to continue for a moment. My heart clenched, a dull ache catching me off guard. I started again. "I want you to know something before anything else. Your father loves you more fiercely than anyone ever could. Do not blame him for my illness. Do not blame him for my leaving." The lamp flickered, or perhaps my vision blurred. I wasn't sure. He carried so much for me, more than I ever told you. He protected you from pain that would have broken you. If you're angry at him someday, please try to forgive him. He only ever tried to keep you whole. I lowered the letter onto the desk and pressed my palms against my eyes. Even after all these years, her words still found the tender parts of me. I took a long breath before continuing. If you grew distant from him, I know it was because you didn't understand what he carried, not because you didn't love him. Children often mistake silence for failure, but his silence was love. Silence was love. I had never found better words than those. I kept reading, each line a quiet knife. He held my hand until the end. He made sure I never felt alone. He cried only once, when he thought I was asleep. He thought I didn't hear him whisper, "Please don't go." But I did. I stopped again. My hands shook. All these years I thought I'd hidden that moment. Don't be angry with your father for not saving me. The truth is, he saved me every day he stayed beside me. Every day he kept the house warm for us. Every day he made you feel safe. My throat tightened. I had to swallow twice to clear it. One day, Lily, you will be a mother. And when that time comes, you will realize how impossible it is to shield your child from every heartbreak. You will understand your father's choices, and you will understand that loving someone does not mean protecting them from the truth. It means carrying the truth with them. I placed the letter down carefully, as though it were glass. There were more pages, 5 to be exact. 5 pages of a mother's last attempt to sew together the future she would not live to see. But I didn't read the rest. I couldn't. Not yet. The first page alone held enough weight to flatten me. I folded it carefully, slid it back into the envelope, and closed the box. I stared at it for a long time before whispering, "She wrote this to save you, Lily, not to bury you." But how would Lily take it now, after years of silence, misunderstanding, and resentment? Would the truth free her or break her? I didn't know, but I felt, deep in my bones, that tomorrow I would have to find out. Because storms don't pass on their own. They wait for someone to open the window just enough to let in the first sliver of clearing sky. And I was ready to open that window. The next morning arrived with the kind of fragile stillness that comes after a long storm. The world washed clean, but not yet dry. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee cooling between my hands, staring out the window without really seeing anything. My mind was still tangled in the words from Anna's letter, looping them endlessly, as if repetition might somehow make them easier to carry. It didn't. Some truths grow heavier the more familiar they become. As I sat there, lost in thought, I heard a soft knock at the front door, a timid one, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that fears it. I knew that knock before I even stood from the chair. Emily. My granddaughter was the only one who ever knocked like she was afraid the house itself might break. I opened the door and found her standing there in her school jacket, backpack slung over one shoulder, her hair pulled into a loose braid she probably did in a hurry. Her eyes were wide, too wide for a child her age. Children shouldn't carry fear that deep in their expressions. "Grandpa?" she whispered. I stepped aside. "Come in, sweetheart." She walked in quietly, her shoulders hunched, her hands twisting the strap of her backpack. She looked smaller today, or maybe she'd been shrinking for a long time under the weight of things she didn't understand. I closed the door gently. "Does your mother know you're here?" Emily hesitated. Her silence told me everything. "She left early," she said, finally, voice small. "She said she needed space." "From what?" Emily swallowed. "From everything." A hollow ache spread through my chest. I guided her to the kitchen table and sat beside her. She placed her backpack on the floor and looked down at her shoes, tapping her toes together nervously. "I didn't know where else to go," she confessed. "Mom hasn't been okay since yesterday, or before that. She cries a lot when she thinks I'm asleep." Her voice trembled, and she blinked fast, too fast. I reached across the table and rested my hand lightly on hers. "You did the right thing coming here." She nodded, though she didn't look convinced. For a while, neither of us spoke. The refrigerator hummed. A bird landed on the railing outside and chirped once before flying away. The house felt unusually alive today, as if it too sensed the shift in our family's fragile orbit. After a long pause, Emily whispered, "Is it because of Grandma?" The question hit me like an unexpected wave. I drew in a slow breath. "Why do you ask that?" I said softly. Emily shrugged. "Mom always gets upset when people talk about her, or when she sees old pictures, or when you come over." Her face colored with guilt, as if speaking the truth were a betrayal. I squeezed her hand gently. "It's all right. You can tell me anything." She looked up at me then, those same hazel eyes her mother had at her age, only clearer, less clouded by the weight of years. "Mom thinks she has to be strong all the time," Emily said. "But she's not. She's tired, she's scared, and I don't think she knows why." I nodded slowly. "Your mom carries a lot inside her, things she didn't have people to help her with." "But she has you," Emily said. "Why doesn't she talk to you?" A question I'd been asking myself for over a decade. "Because sometimes," I said quietly, "the people we love most are the ones we're most afraid to be honest with." Emily frowned, trying to understand that. "I'm not afraid to be honest with you." A small smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. "I know." She looked toward the wooden box on the shelf behind me. Her eyes lingered there, curiosity glowing beneath the sadness. "Grandpa?" she asked softly. "What's in that box?" I hesitated, glancing back at it. "Something from your grandmother." Emily's breath caught. "From Grandma? You still have things she made?" "I have many things," I told her, "but the one in that box, it's meant for your mother." Emily nodded slowly, absorbing that. After a moment, I stood and walked to the shelf. My hand slid across the wooden surface of the box, feeling the familiar grooves where Anna's knife had slipped, leaving tiny scars in the grain. I lifted it and returned to the table, setting it down gently between us. Emily stared at it with a reverence that made my heart ache. "I can't open it," I said softly. "Not yet. It's not mine to open." "What is it?" she whispered. "A letter," I said, "from your grandmother. She wrote it for your mom before she passed." Emily touched the lid with her fingertips, as if afraid the box might evaporate. "Why hasn't Mom read it?" "Because the time was never right," I replied. "Your grandmother wanted her to read it only when she was ready to understand what was inside." Emily's brow furrowed. "Is Mom ready now?" I exhaled slowly. "I think she's close, but she needs help getting there." Emily looked up at me with a kind of gentle determination I'd only ever seen in one other person, her grandmother. "What kind of help?" "The kind that doesn't push her," I said. "The kind that waits beside her until she's brave enough to take the step herself." Emily nodded, her eyes glassy. "I can do that." "I know you can," I said. She drew in a shaky breath. "Grandpa, Mom said she's a bad daughter." The words sliced through me. "She's not," I whispered fiercely. "She's hurting, and when people hurt, they say things about themselves that aren't true." Emily looked relieved, though still sad. "I told her that, but she didn't believe me." "She will," I said softly, "in time." The room was quiet again, but it was no longer a heavy silence. It felt like a moment suspended, a small fragile bridge forming between the past and the present. Emily wiped her eyes. "Can I have something of Grandma's? Just something small?" she asked, almost apologetically. I opened the box, not the letter, but a small side compartment where Anna kept little keepsakes. I pulled out a delicate hairpin made of carved wood. Anna had used it every morning, even when her hands grew too weak. Emily gasped softly. "It's beautiful." "It was hers," I said, placing it gently in her palm. Tears welled in her eyes as she closed her fingers around it. Not tears of grief, tears of connection. She stood, slipped her backpack on, and hugged me tightly, tighter than she ever had before. "Thank you, Grandpa," she whispered, for not giving up on Mom. My heart cracked a little at that. I never will, I promised. As I walked her to the front door, I realized something. The letter might heal Lily, but it might also break her first. And healing always begins at the deepest break. When Emily stepped onto the porch and headed down the walkway, clutching her grandmother's hairpin, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Tomorrow, I would knock on that door one last time and leave Lily with the truth she'd run from for half her life. The next morning, I woke with a strange sense of resolve in my chest. A heaviness, yes, but this one had shape, direction, purpose, like a stone placed intentionally, not one I stumbled over. I showered, dressed, and stood for a long time in front of the mirror, studying the man reflected back at me. Old, yes, lined with years, weathered by grief, but also steady, capable, ready. I tucked the wooden box under my arm as I left the house, though I still hadn't decided if I would give Lily the letter today. That choice would depend on her, on what she allowed me to see in her, on whether she would finally stop hiding behind the walls she had spent years building thicker and higher. The drive to her house felt longer than usual. The sky was bright today, too bright for the mood I carried with me. Sunlight glinted off rooftops and car hoods, sharp and unforgiving, like truth itself. When I pulled up to her curb, I noticed something immediately. The blinds in her living room were half open. A small thing, ordinary, but for Lily, it meant something. A crack in the fortress. I approached the house slowly, rehearsing what I might say. How do you open old wounds without making them bleed again? How do you tell your child the truth you buried to protect her? There was no script for this, only intention. I knocked. Footsteps, hesitant, dragging. The door opened, not just an inch this time, but fully. Lily stood there in a worn t-shirt and faded jeans, her hair tied messily at the back of her head. Her eyes were red, but her face held something new. Not anger, not fear. Exhaustion, yes. Vulnerability, absolutely. But also a flicker of something I hadn't seen in a very long time. A willingness to listen. She stepped aside without speaking, and I entered. The house was still untidy, papers scattered, dishes piled, laundry slumped in baskets. But it felt less chaotic than before, as if she had finally stopped trying to control the mess and let it simply be. She closed the door gently behind me. "Dad," she said, voice low. She didn't finish the sentence. Instead, she gestured toward the living room. I took my seat in the same armchair where I used to sit when visiting, back when things were still warm between us. She stood across from me for a moment before sinking into the couch, elbows on her knees, hands folded tightly. She looked like someone bracing for impact. "Before you say anything," she began, I need to apologize." I didn't interrupt. She took a long, shaky breath. "What I said yesterday, I didn't mean it, but—" She looked down, her voice crumbling. "I'm not okay, Dad." That admission, simple, honest, hit me harder than any shouted accusation ever had. I leaned forward. "Lily!" "No," she said, raising a trembling hand to stop me. "Let me talk. If I don't say this now, I won't be able to." I nodded. She took a deep breath and spoke. "I'm angry all the time, at everything, at you, at myself, at Emily when she asks me too many questions, at work, at the bills, at Mom." Her voice broke on the last word. "I feel like everything is falling apart and I don't know how to stop it." Tears streaked down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. "And yesterday, when you came, I wasn't angry at you. I was angry at myself, for failing, for not being better, for—" Her breath hitched sharply. "For being nothing like Mom." She covered her face with her hands. Ah, there it was, the truth she had been holding for years. Guilt, comparison, the impossible shadow of a mother she put on a pedestal so high she could never reach it. I rose from the chair, slowly, and set the wooden box on the coffee table between us. Lily stared at it with a mixture of terror and longing. "Lily," I said softly, "you and your mother were not meant to be the same woman. She never wanted that." She shook her head violently. "You say that, but you don't know." "I do," I interrupted gently. Her breath stilled. "I know because she wrote it." Her eyes widened. Her hands dropped from her face. She looked from me to the box as though it contained a live wire ready to shock her. I, I can't," she whispered. "I can't handle whatever's in there." Her fear wasn't of the letter, it was of the truth she had spent half her life imagining. The imagined version was always worse than reality. Pain loves exaggeration. "You don't have to open it today," I said. "You don't have to open it at all. But you deserve to know the truth. From me, if not from her." She blinked, tears gathering again. "What truth?" she asked, voice barely audible. I sat back down. "The truth about the night your mother died." Her whole body tensed. "No," she whispered immediately. "No, Dad, I don't want to talk about that. I can't." "You've spent 12 years avoiding it," I said, my voice steady but kind. "And it's hurting you, Lily. It's hurting you more than the truth ever could." Her lips parted, but she didn't argue. I continued, slowly, carefully, like pulling thorns from a wound that had grown around them. "That night," I said, "your mother wasn't angry at you. She wasn't disappointed. She understood why you didn't come sooner. She asked me to tell you that, but I never found the right time." Lily shook her head, crying silently. "She died thinking of you, talking about you, loving you. You were not the reason she left this world. She told me to protect you from the pain for as long as I could." Lily covered her mouth with trembling fingers. Her shoulders heaved. That's not what I thought," she whispered. I thought she wanted you to tell me everything, and when you didn't, I blamed me," I finished gently. She lowered her hands. Her face crumpled with regret. "I was so young," she said. "I didn't know how to handle losing her. I didn't know how to handle anything." "I know," I said, "and I should have talked to you. I should have told you the truth. I should have been stronger." We sat in silence for a long moment, two people caught in the gravity of a shared wound, finally acknowledging it. Then Lily looked at the box again. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "Dad, does it say she forgave me?" "More than that," I said. "She never blamed you in the first place." Lily broke at that, completely. The strongest, deepest cry she had ever allowed herself in my presence. She folded into her hands, her body shaking with grief she had been storing for over a decade. I moved to sit beside her, unsure whether she wanted comfort, but unable to stay distant. She leaned into me, hesitant at first, then fully, like she used to when she was small and her world felt too big. "I don't want to hate you anymore," she whispered into my shoulder. "You never did," I murmured. "You were just hurting." Her fingers clutched my sleeve with a desperation that squeezed my heart. We stayed like that for a long time, father and daughter on a couch cluttered with laundry, surrounded by a house that held more mess inside it than either of us knew how to organize. But something shifted between us. Quiet, fragile, real. The first crack in the wall she'd built. The first breath she'd taken in years that wasn't stolen by grief. When she finally pulled away, eyes swollen and red, she whispered, "Dad, I need to hear the rest. I need to know everything." I nodded. The moment had arrived. The moment that would lead her, slowly, painfully, necessarily, toward the letter waiting inside the wooden box. There is a moment in every long-buried truth where silence becomes unbearable, where not speaking feels like a deeper betrayal than the truth itself. As Lily sat beside me on the couch, eyes swollen and hands trembling, I sensed she had finally reached that moment. Her breathing steadied, though barely. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, smearing tears across her skin like watercolor strokes. "Tell me," she whispered, "tell me everything I didn't know." I nodded slowly, gathering the words I had buried in the corners of my memory, dusty, sharp, and heavy. Words I had avoided because I thought silence would protect her. But silence had only created a different kind of wound. "All right," I said softly. We'll start at the beginning." She folded her hands in her lap, bracing herself as though preparing for an impact. "It was a Tuesday," I began. "A quiet one. Your mom had been feeling weaker for days, but she didn't want you to worry. She told me not to call you home early. She said you had a presentation at school." Lily nodded. "I remember. I got an A on it. I ran home afterward to show her, but she was asleep on the couch." "She wasn't asleep," I said gently. "She didn't want you to see how much pain she was in." Lily inhaled sharply, a tremor running through her shoulders. But she didn't interrupt. That night, her breathing grew shallow. She squeezed my hand and said, "Call Lily. Tell her I love her." "I called you several times." Lily lowered her eyes. "I was at Julia's house," she murmured. "We were fighting about something stupid. I turned my phone off because I didn't want to talk to anyone." Her voice cracked on the confession. Guilt, old and festering, rose to the surface. "I know," I said. "I knew then. And your mom understood, too. She wasn't angry, not even a little." Tears slid down her cheeks again, softer this time, more resigned. "When she realized you wouldn't come in time, she told me something I've never forgotten. She said, 'Don't let her hate you for this. Don't let her blame you.'" Lily's lips parted. "She said that?" she whispered, as though afraid to believe it. "She did," I said, "more than once." A sob escaped her. She covered her mouth to keep it contained. "She didn't want your last memory of her to be a struggle," I continued. "She asked me to protect you from that. So I told you she passed peacefully in her sleep. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either." Lily shook her head slowly. "I always thought you were hiding something darker, something you didn't want me to know." "I was hiding her love," I said, "not her suffering." For a moment, she couldn't breathe. She pressed a hand to her forehead and hunched forward, almost curling into herself. "And the letter," she whispered. "Her words," I said. "Her truth, in her own handwriting, written for the day you were ready to hear it." She stared at the box on the table, the air between her and it charged with something fragile and electric. "I don't know if I can read it," she said, voice trembling. "What if it hurts? What if it changes everything?" I took a slow breath. "Some things need to change, Lily. Pain doesn't go away just because we pretend it isn't there." She closed her eyes tightly. "I've spent years being angry at you," she whispered. "Angry at myself, angry at everything. I blamed you for things I barely even remembered clearly." Her shoulders shook. "I wanted someone to be responsible because I couldn't handle losing her." I didn't respond. I simply let her speak, something I should have done more often. After a long silence, she lifted her head. "Dad," she said, voice breaking, "I need to ask you something." I waited. Did she suffer at the end? My chest tightened. A question asked too late, yet asked exactly when it needed answering. "No," I said gently. "She wasn't in pain. She held my hand, and she was calm. She told me she wasn't afraid. She said she knew you loved her, that you just didn't know how to say goodbye." Lily's face crumpled. "Oh God," she whispered, tears streaming freely now. "I didn't get to say goodbye." I reached out and placed my hand over hers. "You're saying it now," I said quietly. We sat there, two broken halves of the same story, finally aligning after years of miscommunication and unspoken grief. Then Lily pulled her hand away, only to wipe at her face, inhale shakingly, and look again at the wooden box. "Dad," she said, her voice steadier but threaded with fear, I think I need the letter." Those words were heavier than the box itself. I swallowed and reached for it slowly, as if handing someone a live flame. But before I opened it, I paused. "Lily," I said, looking her directly in the eyes, "once you read this, you cannot unread it. It will change the way you remember your mother. It may also change the way you remember me." She nodded. "I know. It may hurt," I warned. "I know. It may heal." Her voice softened to a whisper. "I want it to." I opened the box. The letter lay inside, sealed, fragile, untouched by time except for the faint yellowing at the edges. Lily stared at it with a reverence that bordered on fear. Her hands shook slightly as she reached for it, but she hesitated, fingers hovering. "I'm not ready to open it now," she whispered. "Not yet. I want to read it alone." "I understand," I said. But she didn't take it. Instead, she pushed the box gently back toward me. "You keep it tonight," she said softly. "I'm afraid if I take it now, I'll either read it too fast or run from it all over again." I nodded. "Tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," she whispered. She stood, unsteady on her feet but straighter than before. As I headed toward the door, she called after me. "Dad?" I turned. Her face was streaked with tears, but her eyes held something new, something light, something hopeful. I'm glad you came today," she said. "I'm glad we talked." Emotion swelled in my chest so strongly I had to breathe carefully to contain it. "So am I," said. When I stepped outside, the sunlight hit me differently, warmer, softer, as if the world itself was loosening the knots it had tied around us for so long. Tomorrow, I would return with the letter, and tomorrow, Lily would finally learn everything her mother wanted her to know. That night, sleep didn't just elude me. It circled me like a restless animal, brushing against the edges of my consciousness, never fully settling. I found myself moving from room to room, unable to sit for long, unable to lie down without the sensation of my heartbeat thudding too loudly in my ears. In the end, I returned to my study, where the wooden box rested on the desk beneath the soft glow of the lamp. For a long time, I simply stared at it. It's strange how an object so small can hold so much gravity. This box, this letter, had shaped the course of Lily's life without her ever knowing it, held her pain, held her questions, held the very words she'd needed and feared in equal measure. And tomorrow, those words would finally be hers. I opened the box gently. The hinges creaked the way old memories do, soft but full of weight. The letter's envelope still bore Anna's elegant handwriting, slanted and warm. I don't know what compelled me, but I lifted the envelope into my hands again. My heart stuttered in my chest. I hadn't read past the first page. Truthfully, I didn't want to. I had promised myself the letter belonged to Lily, not to me. But something tugged at me now, a quiet instinct, whispering, "You need to know what you're giving her." My fingers hesitated only a moment before unfolding the remaining sheets. And then the words unfolded me. "My sweet Lily, if you're reading this, it means you're older now. Old enough to understand that the world is complicated, and so are the people in it, especially the ones we love most." I inhaled deeply, reading further. "Your father carries guilt he shouldn't carry. He thinks he failed you. He didn't. If I ever kept secrets from you, they were mine, never his. Do not punish him for the choices I made to keep you safe." A lump rose in my throat. "You must understand something important. Grief can turn love into something sharp. It can twist moments, distort memories, make you remember things differently from how they happened. If you ever feel anger toward your father, pause and ask yourself this. Are you angry at him or at the pain you never learned how to speak?" My chest tightened painfully. "He protected you because I asked him to. I begged him, really. You were so young, so bright, so eager to become a woman. I did not want your teenage years to be shaped by death. I wanted you to live, not brace for loss." A tear slid down my cheek. "Do not punish him for letting you live. It was my gift to you, and his gift to me." My hands trembled. I tried to steady my breathing, but the letter pulled me deeper, refusing to let me surface. "And if you ever fear you are failing as a daughter, a mother, or a person, stop. You are enough, more than enough. I know you, Lily. I know your heart. I carried it inside me long before you ever had to carry anything yourself." It felt like Anna was in the room, breathing, speaking, wrapping her arms around us both from across time. The next lines were softer, more intimate. Tell Emily about me someday. Tell her I would have loved her. Tell her her mother was brave. I closed my eyes, swallowing hard. Then came the final paragraph. And when the time comes, when your grief grows too heavy or your anger grows too sharp, talk to your father. He is quieter than I am, more guarded with his feelings. But don't mistake quiet for coldness. His silence is a kind of love. He holds everything inside so you don't have to. I pressed the letter to my chest. Anna had always understood me better than I understood myself. I placed the pages back in the envelope, sealed it gently, and returned them to the box. I sat there until the lamp flickered, its bulb nearing the end of its life. Eventually, exhaustion found me. Sleep came with the weight of knowing tomorrow would be the hardest day yet. Morning arrived with a pale, hesitant dawn. I took the box in my hands, carefully, reverently, and drove to Lily's house. As soon as I stepped out of the car, I noticed her silhouette through the living room window. She was sitting on the couch, elbows resting on her knees, staring at her clasped hands. When I knocked, she opened the door almost immediately. No hesitation, no crack, no distance, just her. Her face was tired but calmer, like she'd done a night's worth of internal work and was still somewhere in the middle of finishing it. "Dad," she said quietly, "come in." Her voice trembled, not from anger, from anticipation. We sat across from each other again, the wooden box between us like some sacred artifact. She stared at the grain of the wood, the latch, the memories she feared and needed in equal measure. "I dreamed about her last night," she whispered. "I haven't dreamed of Mom in years." "What happened in the dream?" I asked gently. She shook her head. "It wasn't really an event, just her, sitting beside me, like she used to. She didn't say anything, but she kept asking her what it was, and she kept smiling without answering." Her eyes drifted to the box. "I know what it was now," she whispered. I placed the box in front of her. Her fingers hovered again, closer this time. "Lily," I said softly, "you don't have to read it here. You don't have to read it now." "I know," she said. Another breath. "But if I don't do it today, I never will." She lifted the lid. Her hands shook as she picked up the envelope. Fear flickered across her face, real, raw, human. The kind of fear you feel only when you're standing at the edge of a truth that can alter the entire architecture of your life. She didn't open it immediately. Instead, she closed her eyes and whispered, almost to herself, "Please, let this help me. Let this fix something." And then, slowly, she unsealed the envelope. Her mother's handwriting appeared like a voice returning from another lifetime. She read in silence. Her fingers gripped the paper tightly. Her chin trembled. Her breath caught in her throat again and again. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I didn't intrude. I simply watched as the story of her life shifted beneath her, as grief cracked open and something luminous escaped through the cracks. Halfway through the second page, she stopped. Her eyes squeezed shut. Tears spilled over her cheeks. "Oh God," she whispered. "She didn't blame me. She didn't blame me at all." Her sob was deep, so deep it felt like it came from the very place inside her where she had been carrying a shadow for over a decade. She kept reading. Every line broke her. Every line healed her. When she reached the final paragraph, she didn't cry. She collapsed forward, not onto the couch, not into her hands, but into me. Her arms wrapped around my shoulders, her forehead against my chest, her entire body trembling. "Dad," she gasped. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I held her tightly, not as a father holding a broken daughter, but as a man finally receiving the forgiveness he'd never asked for, but always hoped for. "You have nothing to be sorry for," I whispered. "Nothing, Lily." She shook her head against my chest. "I should have trusted you. I should have asked. I should have. You were a child, I said gently. A child in pain. A child who lost her mother. You did the only thing your heart knew how to do. She cried harder. I've been so angry for so long, she whispered. I didn't even know why anymore. I know, I said. And now you don't have to carry that anymore. We stayed like that, father and daughter, finally aligned for a long time. The kind of long time that shifts timelines. The kind that repairs years in minutes. When she finally pulled away, her eyes were red but clear, brighter than I had seen them since she was 17. Dad, she whispered. Yes, Lily? Can we start over? My breath hitched in my chest. Yes, I said, voice thick. We can start anywhere you want. She smiled then, a small, fragile smile, but real, genuine, a beginning, the kind her mother would have been proud of. For the first time in what felt like an entire decade, Lily didn't seem hollow. Her eyes, still puffy from crying, held an unmistakable light, a softness I thought had been lost forever beneath layers of unspoken grief. She sat quietly on the couch, holding the letter in both hands with reverence, as though the paper itself were warm. It's her, she whispered. It feels like she's here. She is, I said softly, in her words, in you. Lily shook her head in disbelief. I spent half my life telling myself Mom would be disappointed in me. Her voice trembled. I thought she'd think I was doing everything wrong, that I couldn't live up to her. She didn't want you to live up to her, I replied gently. She wanted you to live, that's all. A shaky breath escaped her. I didn't know. I didn't know any of this. I let her sit with her mother's words a while longer. There is a special stillness that enters a room after truth is finally spoken, a peace that doesn't erase pain but makes it bearable, allows the healing to begin. After a few minutes, Lily carefully refolded the letter and placed it back in the envelope as though tucking her mother into bed for the night. She closed the wooden box and rested both palms on its lid. Dad, she said, thank you for keeping this safe. I kept it safe for you, I said, but I'm sorry I waited so long. She shook her head. No, I wouldn't have understood it before. I wasn't ready. Her voice softened. Maybe Mom knew that. Her fingers traced the carved edges of the box. I think she knew everything. Silence settled again, warm and full. I could feel the walls she'd built over years finally loosening, brick by brick. Just then, the front door opened and Emily stepped inside, cheeks rosy from the cold outside. She stopped when she saw us sitting together, saw the remains of tears, the softness in Lily's expression, the wooden box between us. Mom? She asked cautiously. Lily stood and crossed the room in 2 quick steps, pulling Emily into her arms. No hesitation, no forced smile, no brittle tension. Just a mother holding her daughter. I'm okay, Lily whispered into Emily's hair. I'm okay, sweetheart. Emily hugged her tighter. Did you read it? Lily nodded, her voice cracking. Yes, and it helped. When they pulled apart, Emily looked between us with a hopeful expression. Are you guys better now? Lily glanced at me, a smile forming. We're getting there. I smiled back, one step at a time. Emily beamed, the relief on her face bright as sunlight after rain. Can we have lunch together, like all 3 of us? Lily wiped her eyes and laughed softly. Yes, I think we can. It wasn't a grand reconciliation or a sweeping movie scene. It was just 3 people standing in a messy living room on a quiet afternoon, trying to learn how to love each other again, trying to fill the spaces grief had hollowed out. And sometimes that's the most extraordinary healing of all. Lunch wasn't complicated. Lily heated up leftover pasta. Emily set the table. I poured water into mismatched glasses. We talked about school, about an upcoming dance recital, about the garden Lily planned to revive in spring. Ordinary things, gentle things. And beneath all of it, something warm hummed. Connection finding its footing again. At one point, Lily touched my hand lightly. Dad, would you stay for dinner too, if you're not busy? I swallowed the swell of emotion in my throat. I'd like that. Her eyes softened. Good. By evening, the house felt different, brighter, like someone had opened all the windows and let fresh air rush in. Emily danced around the living room, showing me little moves she'd learned. Lily laughed, a sound I hadn't heard in so long. It felt like a gift. When I finally stood to leave, Lily walked me to the door. Dad, she said quietly, I want to say something. I waited. I'm sorry for how I treated you, for all the years I kept pushing you away. I didn't understand what I was feeling. I just didn't want to hurt anymore. I know, I said softly. You don't need to explain. She stepped closer and, for the first time since she was a teenager, wrapped her arms around me. It was gentle at first, tentative, then stronger, as though embracing the version of me she had forgotten she trusted. Thank you, she whispered into my shoulder, for not giving up on me. Emotion struck deep in my chest. I rested my hand on her back. You're my daughter, I murmured. I'll never give up on you. When she finally pulled away, her eyes shone, not with grief this time, but with something softer. Peace. Come by tomorrow, she said. We'll all have breakfast together. I nodded. I'd like that. As I stepped out onto the porch, I inhaled the evening air, cool, crisp, carrying the faint scent of her jasmine bush just beginning to bloom. For years, I've lived in a house filled with silence. For years, I've carried the weight of a misunderstanding that broke my daughter's heart and mine. But today, something shifted. Something repaired. Something softened. Grief didn't leave us. It never does. But it finally loosened its grip enough for love to stand upright again. I turned back, just once, to look through the window. Lily and Emily were standing together, waving. The lights behind them glowed warm and golden, like a home finally waking after a long, cold sleep. I lifted my hand and waved back, and as I walked toward my car, I whispered into the dusk, Anna, I kept my promise. She's coming back to me now. Some letters heal more than they reveal. Some truths are heavy because they carry love inside them. And some doors once shut in anger open softly again with the gentlest touch of forgiveness. Ours had opened, at last.